Hey there, it's Lara here again with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology forecast, this time for the week of April 17th to 23rd, 2019. Thanks for being here, as always. Before we really get into it here, I just want to acknowledge that it's been some intense days, right? We're in some intense energy right now. I know this sounds like something that you keep hearing from me and probably from other, astrology folks and other people that do this kind of work and tune into energy and that sort of thing. Or if you're somebody yourself who is that kind of sensitive person, you're not alone. I've been hearing from a lot of people who are really feeling it. And here's the thing. We are going through an extended period of change, of dismantling of the old to build something new, of transformation. And at points along that journey, we hit these pockets of intensity, right? Where it's more intense even than usual. And that's kind of where we've been at in the month of April. And, that's going to continue. And the last few days have been kind of crazy. And I know, I know that other folks are feeling it. So what I want to say to you is hang in there. Do what it takes to take good care of yourself and your tribe, and just try to, I know sometimes it's easier said than done, but try to realize and try to look at the bigger picture and try to understand that although it seems very much like things are just getting worse and worse and worse, understand that it has to, in some ways, get worse before it gets better, right? That's the nature of any kind of significant, sustainable change. I'm always reminded of this quote. It's Deepak Chopra, who sometimes I'll share it on Facebook or Instagram. All great changes are preceded by chaos. And how true is that right now? So, don't get caught up in the fear. Because there is so much fear out there right now, so much fear mongering going on, and so much, there's a lot of reasons on the surface, it appears, for us to be afraid. But don't fall prey to that, right? Don't fall prey. I could go on and on and on here, and I'll interject this and some of the reasons why I'm saying this to you as we go through the astrology, but I kind of just wanted to start off with that message at the beginning. And I hope if you have, if you haven't connected on Facebook, on Instagram yet, I'd really love it if you do that, because right now I'm only here on YouTube once a week, and on Facebook and Instagram, I'm there more often, and I post more often, and there's a little more interaction that goes on. So if that's something that you're interested in, then please connect there, and the links are below as well. So there's so much to talk about. I barely know where to begin here, but I'm going to try. I think the place I'm going to start is bringing up, once again, the activity that's going on in the sign of Capricorn, right? So this Saturn and Pluto and the South Node coming together in the sign of Capricorn, Saturn and Pluto getting closer and closer together, and this particular week, there was a major news story that broke. I mean, there were many, but I'm sure that you heard about Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris burning. And this was such, I posted this on Facebook and Instagram, and I know other astrologers spoke about it as well. This was such a material kind of example, like in the material real world, you know, a tangible example of this kind of energy with Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node that's been going on, right? Saturn, the structures, the hierarchy, the traditions, the rules, meeting up with Pluto, the destroyer and creator of worlds kind of thing. Pluto, the energy of transformation. And then the South Node representing our past, right? Our collective past, our karmic past, our things that need to be released. You know, we've learned those lessons, and now it's not a matter of forgetting them and leaving them completely behind, but we need to release those things. So it was really wild to see this example happen in real life so obviously. And it reminded me, it reminded me of the Tower card in the tarot. So I don't know, you know, if you're familiar with tarot or not. I read tarot as well, but I want to show you this card. This is like a representation, right? So the Tower card here, you can see, right? It's showing this massive destruction. You see the crown up here, right? The status quo is being disrupted with the Tower card here in a big way. And this is kind of even like the energy of Uranus and Taurus, right? Uranus is the change bringer, shakeups, you know, sudden impacts, that sort of thing. And Taurus is that stable earth energy, the energy of like the material realm. So we can see that here too. And this looks kind of scary, right? I mean, the image here looks kind of scary, but here's the thing. This kind of disruption is necessary. Here's the next card in the deck for this to happen. So here's the Star card, which is right after the Tower card in the tarot. And the Star card is really representative of that return to balance and harmony and optimism. These 7 stars here represent the chakras, right? And the balancing of that. And the, you know, the wisdom that we've gleaned from what we've been through, and the calmness that follows eventually, right? This. I don't know if that's the right way when you're looking, because I'm opposite you. But so I wanted to show you that and just speak a little about that. And hopefully that kind of illustrates where we're at. And also it helps you realize, like, yes, it seems scary on the surface, and it is in many ways. It is scary. And I'm not saying that to freak you out, but I mean, you know, just look around at what's going on in our world. You can see examples of it all over the place. But the idea here is that this needs to happen on some level to bring about the change that we all need to move forward, you know, more evolved and more balanced and more in harmony with each other, with the planet, with the cosmos, you know, all of it. So what I'm going to try to chunk it down for you here in terms of what's going on. So, you know, this week specifically, that background story of Saturn and Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn, you know, that's going to be there. That's just going to be there, and it will get triggered on and off. And, so that's kind of like the backdrop, right, for everything. And this week, I described it on Facebook and Instagram as it sort of feels like a quickening is happening right now. And like I said, several people have reached out and shared their own feelings and experiences with how they've been tuning into this energy, even if they don't know anything about astrology. It's just the astrology gives us like a container, right, to understand and to put things in context. So we have today the moon in the sign of Virgo, and then it's moving into Libra later, and then it will move into Scorpio on Friday, and Sagittarius Sunday, and then Capricorn on Tuesday. And when the moon goes into Libra, we're going to have a full moon in Libra, the second of 2 full moons in Libra that have happened in a month. And so, there's discrepancy in terms of, is that a full moon? Some people say a full moon, it's like 2 full moons in the same sign in a calendar month. But it's 2 consecutive moons in the same sign that we are having, which is unusual. And I've spoken about this before. I talked about it when I talked about the first full moon in Libra in that video. And we have so much other activity surrounding that this week. There's so much else going on. So some of those things are that today on the 17th, as I'm recording this and you may be listening to it, the planet Mercury, the planet of our mind, our communications, the messenger god, is moving into the sign of Aries. So Mercury has spent an extended amount of time in Pisces, right? Including the retrograde there. Mercury is just clearing that shadow period today. That shadow period, so moving out of Pisces and onto new territory and moving into Aries, where we will find our minds a lot sharper and our communications potentially a lot sharper. Mercury is more sort of dynamic, more impulsive when Mercury is in Aries. And so in some ways this is really good, or we can especially, it's a relief from, in many ways, from the Mercury and Pisces energy that we're coming out of, and it will just feel a lot more active. Of course, hopefully it doesn't lead to an overactive mind in some ways, and sort of, those anxious kind of moments when our mind is just too active, right? And we need to kind of rein it in. And so if that's happening for you, then I encourage you to do whatever you do that helps you calm your mind, whether that be physical activity, whether that be meditation, mindfulness practice, getting out in nature, connecting with some like-minded people, taking a big old nap, getting in the kitchen and having some sort of moving meditation. That's what I like to call it, in the kitchen, whatever it takes. And the other thing to note with this energy of Mercury in Aries is it can make us a little impulsive, where we kind of like put our foot in our mouth, or we speak before we really think it through. Our communications may be a little aggressive. And you know what? In some ways that's okay, but just like sometimes we need to express our anger, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to do it in a way that is honorable, that is in integrity, that is not harming, for the sake of harming another person or people. So just avoid knee-jerk reactions around this time. But in general, that energy will be a lot more, our thinking will be more crisp, more quick, more clear with Mercury and Aries. Okay, and then we've got the full moon happening on Friday the 19th, and I'm going to get to that. And I'll leave that piece because I'm going to speak to each sign in terms of the full moon energy. So I'm going to leave that for a second. The other things that we have happening are on the 20th. So that would be Saturday, right? The sun is entering Taurus Saturday morning. And so this will bring a sense of stability, groundedness, connection to nature, maybe some paying attention to sort of our resources and our physical world will be highlighted under this energy. But the stability factor may be impacted by the fact that Uranus is currently transiting through Taurus, and the sun is going to meet up with Uranus on the 23rd. And so they're going to have an exact conjunction. And I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail as I get to speaking about the full moon. So, and by the way, happy birthday to Taurus sun sign folks out there. And it seems like spring is finally on the way here. So that's good news where I am anyway. And what else is happening? So more activity in Aries. On the same day that the sun is entering Taurus, Venus is moving out of Pisces, where she's been, and moving into Aries. So Venus is about our relationships, you know, our sort of feelings of love. Venus is about beauty, romance, personal connection, all of that kind of thing. And can have to do with our Venus is also often connected to our resources, our money in some way as well. So with Venus moving into Aries, you know, we can be more passionate. We can be things can be a little more exciting in terms of, you know, those Venusian areas, our relationships in particular. And there is a lot going on with relationship in general over the course of this week, and in relation to this full moon. Lots is happening with Venus and some other things that are lending to this energy, right? And it's shown in so many ways in the chart. Venus, you know, the Aries energy, which is Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, right? The masculine and the feminine, the sun and the moon involved in the full moon, another representation of the masculine and the feminine. And then some asteroids involved here too that I'm going to get to in a second. So that's Venus entering Aries. And we have another ingress, which is when a planet or an asteroid moves into a different sign, right? Switches signs. So what's happening is asteroid Juno, you know, every once in a while I talk about the asteroids, right? And I thought it was relevant this time around. Asteroid Juno is moving into the sign of Cancer and out of Gemini, where she's been. And that she'll be there until June 21st. So Juno is an asteroid. I'm going to show you this on the chart in a minute too. An asteroid that has to do with, it's a relationship asteroid, more on the relationship front, right? Having to do with marriage, or just that kind of, you know, contractual partnership, commitment, soulmates, having to do with loyalty. But the shadow side of Juno can be jealousy. It can be, you know, betrayal. Essentially, Juno is about like the power balance between two people. So Juno is moving signs, and Juno is going to be, Juno and Venus are going to square each other. So those two planetary bodies that have to do with relationships are going to be in this kind of, you know, conversation of tension. And then Venus is also on the 23rd, conjuncting Chiron. So meeting up in the sky with Chiron. Chiron, you know, having to do with healing and wounding and that sort of thing. And, you know, I've said this before, but I've done a couple of videos on Chiron on my channel that are separate outside of the Witchy Wednesday videos. And so if you're interested in knowing more about Chiron, you can check those out. But so Venus is conjuncting Chiron. And then we have this full moon in Libra happening. Libra, the sign of balance, the sign of relationship. And a full moon always brings heightened emotions, right? A full moon is when things are illuminated. There's a culmination. Things come to fruition. We have insights. We sometimes, you know, reap what we've sown, and that can be on the positive end or the negative end. It just sort of depends. We reap what we've sown in the past. You know, and in this case, like, look for evidence of whatever you started a couple of weeks ago. You know, are things coming to fruition now? But that's the shorter term cycle. But a full moon, you know, it's the materialization generally of something. And that can be, like I said, aha moments, you know, ideas, thoughts. It can be a releasing and letting go as well. And it's a need to find the balance between the polarities, because at a full moon, the sun and the moon are opposite each other in the sky. And again, the sun, that sort of divine masculine energy, opposite the moon, the divine feminine, right? We can see relationship here again. And the Libra Aries axis is this axis of the first and the seventh house. Aries is home in the first house, Libra in the seventh house. It is the axis of me, Aries, and my physical journey through life, and, you know, the self, across the sky from we or us, the people we are in relationship with. And also this axis speaks to the relationship we have with ourselves as well, in many ways. I interpret it that way anyway. And so, you know, this is about kind of like self-assertion versus compromise, right? It's about autonomy versus dependence. And that we had that first full moon in Libra on the 20th of March, at the very beginning of the sign of Libra. And this full moon is happening at the very end of the sign of Libra at 29 degrees. And so remember that in the video that I did on the first full moon for the 20th of March, you know, I said that this was the beginning of the story, not the whole story. And so here we are having some further illumination and culmination, right, in terms of these areas of relationship and relating in some way. So I will say, before I show you the chart, and I have more to say before I go through the signs here, but that those folks who have planets, points, sun, moon, rising, a collection of planets at those last 5 degrees of the cardinal signs. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. They will really feel this full moon the most. But everybody, you know, will experience it on some level. Or also the people that are the first few degrees of the fixed signs. So fixed signs are Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus. So those folks are also going to be, you know, really feeling this full moon. Okay, I'm going to show you the chart. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time today, but I guess we'll see how it goes. I'm going to show you the chart and point several things out to you here. Look at all this red dynamic energy, right? This is the energy of like tension and dynamism, really, that we see here. And so let's start at the obvious place. There is the sun, you'll see, right at the end of Aries. This chart was drawn up for the actual full moon, which is on Friday, even though I'm recording this on Wednesday. Right across the sky, there is the moon at 29 degrees Libra. We've got all these red lines here, right? This energy is like squaring all of this activity up in Capricorn here. Pluto, the South Node, Saturn. There's Jupiter in Sagittarius too. But so, you know, squaring. So the Capricorn energy is squaring the full moon energy. Then we also have, there's Mercury, in this case, just moved into Aries. There's Venus just about to move into Aries, finishing up her stay in Pisces. There is Chiron in Aries. This is asteroid Eris, who I haven't spoken about yet, but I'm going to briefly, and I wanted to show you. Look at Eris right there beside the sun. Take note. Uranus in Taurus, Mars in Gemini. There is asteroid Juno, who I just spoke about, in Gemini, getting ready to tip into Cancer, right? And squaring Venus here. See, more red lines. And there's the North Node in the sign of Cancer. Okay, so that's the chart. All right, so I mentioned to you that the sun and the moon are in square to that energy of that's going on in Capricorn. Of specific note, squaring what we call the nodal axis. So the sun and the moon are both squaring the North Node and the South Node. So to be as brief as I can about this, the North and South Node represent kind of our past and our future. That's really simplifying things. But the South Node is where we're coming from. It's what we're really well versed in, what we're very experienced in. It can represent our past lives, our past karma, you know, those kinds of things. And then the North Node is what we are striving for in this incarnation. It is what our soul wants to become more of, to evolve into. My teacher, Mark Jones, calls this the destiny line. And he also says, or just in evolutionary astrology in general, which is the kind of astrology that I have studied most, that squares to the nodal axis are what we call skipped steps. What does that mean? Basically, it means things that can trip you up on your journey. That's the simplest way I can explain it, right? Things that need to be integrated to resolve. And so basically, when the sun is squaring the nodes, we have this challenge to individuation, to being our own individual selves, to owning our power. And then when the sun is squaring, or when the moon is squaring the nodes, this can represent issues that have to do with like unresolved issues that have to do with our family of origin. It can have to do with dissatisfaction with gender roles, issues with the mother or the nurturing figures, emotional kind of, security issues. And so just in general, we can see all of these different pieces are speaking to this need. Ultimately, they're speaking kind of, I feel like everything's speaking through this full moon, the need for balancing those masculine and feminine energies. I've spoken about this many times before, but that theme is coming up again. And, when I say masculine and feminine, I'm not just talking about men and women. Please understand that, right? Everybody has masculine and feminine energies within them. And when those two divine energies are out of balance, we are witnessing that imbalance all around us right now. And in all likelihood, at some, unless we've really been conscious of this and working to integrate it and rebalance it in our own personal lives, we're feeling it in our own personal lives as well. So the one last thing I'm going to say before I go through the signs here is that along with the sun and the moon opposing each other, right? There we go. We've got Uranus here, right close to the sun. So the sun is just about to tip into Taurus, and Uranus is right at the beginning of Taurus. So they're making a conjunction. It will be exact on the 23rd. So Uranus is like opposite this full moon, conjunct the sun. So Uranus conjuncts the sun, or the sun conjuncts Uranus once a year, because it takes the sun once a year to travel around the zodiac, right? So we get this like illumination of Uranian energy once a year. And that happens in whatever area of the chart Uranus is sitting in. So Uranus is sitting in Taurus right now for the next 7 years. And so once a year for 7 years, we'll get this illumination of this Uranian energy in Taurus. Like it's the backdrop going on all the time for 7 years, right? But we'll get this this hit of it. And so this is happening right alongside the full moon. So some powerful stuff going on here. So we can have some, around the time of the full moon, in the days around it, surrounding the full moon, we can have perhaps some kind of major surprises, or even just a sense of restlessness and need for freedom and liberation and excitement, an urge to break free. Uranus is the liberator, the rebel kind of thing. And this can make us act out impulsively on the shadow side, maybe particularly in terms of relationship. And the idea here is to be open, but not erratic and impulsive, not taking dangerous risks or doing things impulsively we may later regret. And if changes and surprises happen for us, try to just understand that that's part of the bigger picture. Be open and flexible at this time. And when I say changes and surprises, that could most definitely be, much welcome changes and surprises as well. So the last thing I'm going to say, as I mentioned to you about the asteroid Aries, also known as a minor planet. Aries is the goddess of discord and strife. She is like the feminine side of aggression. She's like the female counterpart to Mars energy, right? The female warrior. But female warrior. So how does the masculine and the feminine, how do they express their rage, their aggression differently? Well, ultimately, no matter how angry the feminine gets, they always have this focus on, nurturing, on children, on the future generations, in a sense. And again, keep in mind here, masculine, feminine energy doesn't necessarily mean men and women. Cut and dry. That's not what I'm saying. It could, but it doesn't have to be that, only women are nurturers. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I want you to know is that the sun here is also conjuncting Eris, right? And Uranus. And this just brings another layer of energy into this whole notion of the need for the rebalancing of things, the masculine and the feminine, and perhaps, in some ways, a need to to fight back. I hesitate to use that phrase because I don't mean fight back like physically going out and fighting. I don't mean being attacking people on the internet or, you know, raging at somebody. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, you know, owning your power to do something about it, and to, even if that's just like, and I shouldn't even use the word just, in your own personal life and experience, you know, stop playing into the fear. Start speaking up about what you believe and what you feel. Allow yourself to be an individual. And at the same time, realize that we are all individuals, but we're all in this together, right? So I could go on and on and on and on and on here, but I think I've got about 10 minutes before the camera runs out to go through each of the signs. So I'm going to get to that for you. And we can continue the conversation, you know, on Facebook after the fact, or here in the comments section on YouTube. That would be great if you have any input. All right, so I'm going to speak to where the full moon is happening for you, which will be wherever Libra sits in the chart. And then, but keep in mind, this is happening on an axis. I'll mention the axis, the Libra-Aries axis. So which two houses are impacted with these overall themes of relationship and restoring the balance in some way. So without further ado, let's have at her here. So Libra, we're going to start with you because the full moon is happening in your sign, right? And that's in your first house of the self, of, again, your physical journey through life, of you as an individual. And happening opposite the seventh house, the house of we, us, relationship with other people, you know, either close partners, business partners, anybody you're in a close personal relationship with, your relationship to yourself, you know, your physical body. All of these things here are being illuminated by this full moon, and all of the things that I mentioned previous. And please, I hope that if you haven't listened to the intro, that you go back and do it. It's vital, really, for you to even, you know, kind of grasp what I'm saying here, because I don't have time to do that intro piece for every sign. So the relationship axis is really being triggered for you, particularly Libra, and you're kind of showing the way for the rest of us with this full moon. Virgo, the full moon is happening in your second house, opposite your eighth house. This is the axis of form, physical form versus transformation, right? It's oftentimes called the axis of our, like, resources, our own personal resources. And when I say resources, I mean money, material possessions, time, the effort we put into things, what we value, what we think we're worth, right? Opposite other people's resources, our deep, intimate connections with other people, and our deep, intimate connection with our psyche as well. And so this is the axis that's being triggered for you over this, at the time around the full moon, Virgo, and keeping in mind all of those pieces that I spoke to at the beginning of the video here. Moving on to Leo. I'm doing this quickly so we don't run out of time. But Leo, this is happening, the full moon's in your third house, and it's opposite your ninth house. So this is the axis of the mind. This impacts communications, day-to-day communications versus the big picture communications, and the people that you communicate with. And so, you know, things are being illuminated here, and perhaps some interesting developments will, you know, transpire for you around the time of this full moon, Leo. And again, please keep in mind all those things that I spoke to at the beginning of the video. Moving on to Cancer. Cancer, the full moon's happening for you in the 4th house, opposite the 10th house, which is where the sun will be. This is the axis of the private versus the public. 4th house, right? Full moon is about your emotional security. It's about your home, your family, your tribe, your relationship to mother figures. The legacy you leave on the home front versus the legacy you leave out in public, which is the 10th house. And so, Cancer, this is where the full moon's being activated for you. And please do listen to the intro for more depth there. Gemini, the full moon's happening in the 5th house for you, opposite the 11th. So this is the axis of the individual versus the group. The full moon's in the that 5th house of the individual, of the creative self-expression, of children that you are connected to. So your own children or other children you work with, that kind of thing. What sparks joy for you, how you have fun in life. And then that's opposite the 11th house of the group, friendships, organizations, associations, benefactors, hopes and dreams for the future. That's the axis that's being lit up for you during this full moon. So again, please do check out the intro for more. Taurus, this is happening in your 6th house, opposite the 12th house. So this is like the mundane versus the spiritual. It's about the work we do on the day-to-day, 6th house, versus rest, right? 12th house. It's about our health, our health and wellness routines, and that kind of thing as well will be lit up for Taurus, particularly Taurus rising folks around this time. So listen to the intro for more, Taurus. Moving on to Aries, the full moon's happening in your 7th house, Aries, which is the house of relationship, of connection to the other, opposite the 1st house of, the individual, of you and your physical self. And so that we to me axis is being lit up for you at this time, Aries. Listen to the intro for more, okay? Pisces, the full moon's happening in your 8th house, opposite the 2nd. So full moon is happening in the house of transformation, of other people's resources, of close, intimate connections, of psychological healing, opposite the 2nd house of, your own resources and values and material possessions and self-worth and all of that. That's what's being highlighted for you, Pisces. Listen to the intro for more, please. Aquarius, this is happening in your 9th house. Full moon in the 9th house, opposite the sun in the 3rd, and all that other stuff I talked about in the intro. Please listen to that. So this is the axis of the mind, of the bigger picture versus sort of the day-to-day, right? Communications, learning, connections with foreign cultures, travel, all of that. This is what is being lit up for you, Aquarius, over the course of this full moon. Then Capricorn, the full moon's happening in your 10th house, which is the public house, the house of your career ambitions and your public reputation, who you are out in the world, right? And the legacy you leave there versus your private life, your home, your family, your place of living. And that's the axis that's being lit up for you, Capricorn, at this time. So please listen to the intro for more info on how that could impact you. Sagittarius, the full moon's happening in your 11th house of the group, friendships, organizations, associations, hopes and dreams for the future, benefactors, opposite the individual, this individual self, and the creativity of the individual, including children. So this is the axis that's being triggered for you during this full moon, Sag. Listen to the intro for more details, okay? And then last but not least in this case is Scorpio, where Scorpio, you've got the full moon happening in your 12th house, the house of spirituality, of rest and relaxation and recharging, the house of the unconscious. So Scorpio, that is where the moon is, and then the sun in the 6th house of day-to-day work and health routines and that sort of thing. And that's the axis that's being lit up for you over the course of this full moon, Scorpio. And so have a listen to the intro for more info about how these things can transpire, right? So I know that was super quick, but I felt in this case that the introduction was more important. And if you've got any specific questions, you can leave those below. I really do appreciate it. I love to hear how things are, you know, playing out for you and how you're feeling these days. And, you know, hang in there. Hang in there. This too shall pass. All for ultimately the greater good in the long run, even though it may be difficult for us to really grasp that right now. So take good care of yourself, and catch me on Facebook and Instagram. And I'll see you next week here on YouTube. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.